The space station floated in the darkness between three dying stars. It was old, older than most species in the galaxy could remember. The metal walls had seen thousands of soldiers pass through its halls. Some became legends, others became forgotten. But all of them had one thing in common: they came here weak and they left strong. Or they didn't leave at all. Station 7 was not a kind place. It was not meant to be. The Unified Species Military Academy existed for one purpose only: to create warriors. For 300 years, it had taken the best fighters from over 40 different species and turned them into something better, something harder, something that could survive the wars that burned across the galaxy like wildfire. Instructor stood in the main training hall and watched the new recruits file in. He was, which meant he stood nearly 3 meters tall with 4 powerful arms and skin covered in scales that shifted color with his mood. Right now, they were a calm blue-green. He was not worried about these new cadets. He had broken thousands before them. He would break thousands more after they were gone. His eyes moved slowly across the room, studying each species. There were Tellurians with their hard shell bodies and many eyes. There were Pelions, soft and quick, with fingers that could find any weakness in any armor. There were young too, hopping to prove themselves worthy of their blood. Felt nothing as he looked at them. They were all the same to him, raw material waiting to be shaped. Then his gaze fell on the humans, and his scales flickered with a hint of orange. Curiosity, maybe something else. There were 12 of them standing in a tight group near the back of the hall. They were small by galactic standards, none of them reaching even 2 meters in height. Their skin was soft and came in various shades of brown and pink. They had no natural armor, no claws worth mentioning, no venom in their teeth. They had only 2 arms each and walked on 2 legs. By every measure the galaxy used to judge a species, they were weak. But they came from Earth, and Earth was a death world. Had read the reports. He had studied the data files. Earth was a planet that seemed designed to kill everything living on it. The gravity was crushing 1/4 times the galactic standard. The weather changed without warning, bringing floods and fires and frozen storms. The water was filled with creatures that could tear flesh from bone. The land was covered with predators that hunted in packs. Even the smallest insects carried enough poison to kill. And the humans had not just survived this nightmare world. They had conquered it. Still was not impressed. Reports were just words on a screen. He had trained warriors from dozens of so-called death worlds. They all broke eventually. These humans would be no different. His attention moved to one human in particular. She was smaller than most of her kind, with short black hair cut close to her skull and eyes that seemed to look at nothing and everything at the same time. Her name, according to the file, was Hana. She came from a place called the Korean Peninsula on her home world. She was 23 years old. She had no military experience. Almost laughed. The galaxy was sending him children now. What the file did not tell him was that Hana had been training since she could walk. Her family had run a martial arts school for 7 generations. She had learned to fight before she learned to read. She had broken her first bone at age 6, someone else's bone, not her own. By the time she was 15, there was no one left in her country who could beat her in single combat. By 20, she had stopped competing because it was no longer fair to the others. But Hana did not look dangerous as she stood in that training hall. She looked small and quiet and completely ordinary. That was exactly how she wanted to look. The humans had arrived on the station 3 days ago. They had been given quarters in the lowest section, where the air recyclers hummed loudly through the night and the artificial gravity sometimes flickered. Other species avoided them. The in particular seemed to find their presence offensive. Warriors were supposed to look like warriors. These soft little creatures looked like prey. Hana did not mind. She had spent her whole life being underestimated. It was, in many ways, her greatest weapon. On the first night, she had gathered her fellow human cadets in their shared quarters. There was a tall woman from the northern territories with pale skin and hair like winter snow. There was Ho, a young man with quick hands and a quicker smile who had grown up fighting in the underground circuits of Seoul. There was Quiet and Watchful, who had served 5 years in her nation's special forces before volunteering for this mission. There were others too, 12 humans in total, sent to represent their entire species at the galaxy's most prestigious military academy. 12 humans who knew that everything they did here would be watched, recorded, and judged. 12 humans who understood that failure was not an option. "They think we are weak," Hana had said that first night, her voice soft but clear in the humming darkness. "Let them think it. Do not show them what we can do. Not yet. Not until we have to." The others had nodded. They understood. On Earth, humans had learned long ago that the predator was not always the strongest one. Sometimes the predator was the one that looked like prey until the moment it struck. 3 weeks passed. The training was brutal. Instructor pushed every cadet to their breaking point and beyond. He used pain as a teaching tool. He used humiliation as motivation. He believed that warriors were forged in suffering, and he made sure there was plenty of suffering to go around. The humans did not break. They struggled, yes. They bled and bruised and sometimes crawled back to their quarters too exhausted to eat. But they did not break. More than that, they helped each other. When twisted her ankle during a climbing drill, Ho carried her the rest of the way. When collapsed from heat exhaustion, Hana gave her water from her own ration. When the youngest human cadet, a boy named Junhu, was barely 19, was beaten badly in a sparring match, the others sat with him through the night. Watched this with growing anger. Warriors were supposed to stand alone. They were supposed to let the weak fall behind. This strange human loyalty was wrong. It was offensive. It went against everything he believed about strength and survival. He decided to teach them a lesson they would never forget. And he chose Hana to be the example. The morning began like every other morning on Station 7. The artificial lights turned from dim red to harsh white at exactly 600 hours. The air recyclers changed their tone from the low night hum to the higher daytime whine. Across the station, 200 cadets woke from their bunks and prepared for another day of pain. Hana was already awake when the lights changed. She had been awake for an hour, sitting in the darkness, breathing slowly and steadily. It was a habit she had developed as a child. Her grandfather had taught her that the mind needed quiet time before battle. "The body follows the mind," he used to say. "If your mind is calm, your body will know what to do." She did not know that today would be a battle, but some part of her, some ancient instinct buried deep in her human blood, knew that something was coming. She could feel it the way animals feel a storm before it arrives. The training hall was full by 700 hours. Cadets from every species stood in neat rows on the white training mats. The mats were white for a reason. They showed blood clearly. Instructor liked to see blood. He said it reminded the cadets that they were mortal. Today, he would see plenty of blood. Entered the hall with his scales already shifting toward orange and red. The colors meant aggression. The colors meant he was looking for a fight. The other instructors noticed and quietly moved to the edges of the room. They knew that look. They knew what came next. "Today we learn about hand-to-hand combat," announced. His voice was deep and rough, like rocks grinding together. The translator device on his chest turned his hissing speech into words everyone could understand. "Today we learn about the natural order of things." He began to walk slowly through the rows of cadets. His forearms were clasped behind his back. His tail dragged across the mat with a soft scraping sound. Every cadet he passed seemed to shrink a little, trying to become invisible. "In this galaxy there are strong species and weak species," continued. "This is not opinion, this is fact. The strong survive, the weak serve. This is how it has always been. This is how it will always be." He stopped walking. He had reached the section where the humans stood. "Some species," he said slowly, "come from easy worlds. Worlds where the air is gentle and the water is clean and nothing tries to kill them while they sleep. These species are soft. They are weak. They do not belong among warriors. Hana kept her eyes forward. She did not react. Beside her, she could feel Ho's muscles tightening with anger. She sent him a small signal with her hand, a gesture their group had developed. It meant, stay calm, wait, do nothing. But some species, continued, and now there was something ugly in his voice, believe they are special. They believe that coming from a difficult world makes them strong. They believe they deserve to stand among true warriors. He turned to face Hana directly. His scales were now fully red. His 4 arms unfolded from behind his back. You human female, step forward. Hana stepped forward. Her face showed nothing. Her body was relaxed. She looked exactly like what expected, a small, soft creature about to learn a painful lesson. This human believes she belongs here, announced to the watching crowd. She believes her death world has made her worthy. Today, we correct this delusion. Today, we show everyone the truth about these so-called. He gestured for Hana to move to the center of the training ring. The ring was marked by a red circle painted on the white mat. Inside this circle, anything was allowed. There were no rules in the ring. There was only the strong and the weak. Hana walked to the center and turned to face. She did not take a fighting stance. She simply stood there, hands at her sides, waiting. The watching cadets went quiet. 200 beings from a dozen different worlds held their breath. They knew what was coming. They had seen do this before. He would make an example of this human. He would hurt her badly enough that she would never forget her place. Maybe badly enough that she could never fight again. A Pelian medic moved to the edge of the ring, medical kit ready, waved one of his secondary arms at her dismissively. He did not intend to let anyone interfere. He said one more time, the word dripping with contempt, "Let us see what it is truly worth." He did not give her time to prepare. He did not warn her. He simply struck. His primary right arm shot forward faster than most species could see. It was the same strike he had used hundreds of times before. He had shattered the skulls of warriors with this strike. He had cracked the chest plates of Tellurians. He had killed when he wanted to kill and crippled when he wanted to cripple. Today, he wanted to humiliate. His fist connected with Hana's face at full force. The sound was wet and loud. Everyone in the hall heard it, the crunch of cartilage, the snap of small bones, the spray of blood hitting the white mat in a wide red arc. Hana's head snapped backward. Her body staggered. Her hands flew to her face as blood poured between her fingers. Her nose was destroyed. The bone was broken in 3 places. The cartilage was shattered completely. Blood flowed down her chin, down her neck, soaking into her training uniform until the fabric turned black. Turned away from her. He faced the watching crowd with satisfaction glowing in his red scales. He spread his 4 arms wide, presenting himself as the obvious victor. "This is discipline," he declared. "This is the natural order. Weakness will always." He never finished his sentence. Behind him, Hana lowered her hands from her ruined face. Blood still poured from her broken nose, but she was no longer staggering. She was no longer showing pain. Something had changed in her eyes, something old and dark and very, very dangerous. On Earth, humans had a word for this moment. They called it seeing red. It was the moment when the thinking part of the brain stepped back and something older took control. Something that had kept humans alive through ice ages and famines and wars that had almost ended their species. Hana smiled. It was not a friendly smile. It was not even really a human smile. It was something much older than humanity, something that went back to the first creatures that had crawled out of Earth's ancient oceans and learned to hunt. Sensed the change. Some instinct buried in his blood screamed a warning. He started to turn back toward her. He was too slow. 30 seconds. That was all it would take. 30 seconds to change everything the galaxy thought it knew about humans. 30 seconds to show 200 witnesses what it could really do. The clock started now. Time seemed to slow down. Later, when the witnesses tried to describe what they saw, most of them would struggle to find words. It happened too fast for their minds to process. It was like watching lightning strike. By the time you saw it, it was already over. Hana moved. One moment she was standing 3 meters behind, blood streaming down her face, looking like a broken victim waiting to fall. The next moment she was directly in front of him, inside his guard, closer than any enemy had ever gotten to him in 40 years of combat. His primary arms started to rise in defense. They were too slow. His secondary arms began reaching for her. They were too slow. His tail swept around to strike her legs. It was too slow. Everything was too slow. Hana's palm hit his primary elbow from the inside. She struck at exactly the angle his scales could not protect, the soft joint where the upper arm met the lower, where the armor plating had to be thinned to allow movement. She struck with her whole body behind the blow, channeling the strength that came from growing up on a world with gravity that crushed bones. The crack was loud. It echoed off the walls of the training hall. It was the sound of breaking, of something important coming apart. Screamed. The sound was terrible. It hit frequencies that made several species physically sick. A young Pelian cadet fell to her knees, hands pressed over her hearing membranes. A warrior turned away, unable to watch. Even the other instructors flinched at the sound. His primary arm, now bent in a direction arms were not meant to bend. The bone had snapped completely. White fragments pushed against the scales from the inside, trying to break through. Blood, purple blood, began to seep between the cracks. But Hana was not finished. She had trained for this her entire life. Not for this exact moment, but for moments like it. Her grandfather had taught her that a fight was not won with one strike. A fight was won when your enemy could no longer fight back. She had 8 seconds left. She intended to use every one of them. His other 3 arms moved to protect his broken limb. This was instinct, not strategy. Pain does that. It makes you stupid, makes you focus on the wrong things. Hana had counted on this. She was already moving to her next target. Her legs swept low, catching his right supporting limb at the knee joint. Were tall and heavy, which meant they needed strong legs to hold themselves up. It also meant that when those legs failed, they fell hard. His knee buckled. His massive body started to tip forward. Hana was already there, already in position. Her elbow drove upward into his throat, hitting the soft tissue between his jaw and his chest. Breath through a complex system of tubes in their necks. Hana had studied the diagrams. She knew exactly where to hit. His breath stopped. His lungs tried to pull in air but found none. Panic joined pain in his eyes. He had never felt anything like this. He had never imagined anything like this. Hana had 4 seconds left. She could have stopped. She could have stepped back and let him fall. But her grandfather's voice was in her head, calm and steady. Never leave an enemy able to fight. Never let them think they can try again. Her knee came up hard into the center of his chest. There was a spot there, hidden beneath the thick chest plates where kept a cluster of important nerves. It was a secret weakness that few outside their species knew about. Hana knew about it. She had done her research. The strike landed perfectly. His body went rigid for 1 heartbeat. Then every muscle relaxed at once. His remaining 3 arms dropped to his sides. His legs gave out completely. He fell forward onto the white mat, purple blood mixing with the red human blood already there. 30 seconds. Exactly 30 seconds. Hana stood over him. Blood still poured from her broken nose, dripping down onto his back, but she did not seem to notice. Her breathing was slightly faster than normal. That was the only sign that anything had happened. The training hall was completely silent. 200 cadets stood frozen in place, their minds trying to understand what they had just witnessed. The instructors stared with scales that had turned the color of fear. Was still alive. He was breathing in short, painful gasps, his damaged throat making a whistling sound with each breath. His broken arm lay twisted beside him. His eyes were open but unfocused, lost somewhere between consciousness and the darkness that wanted to claim him. Hannah spoke. Her voice was calm, almost gentle. Lesson received, Instructor. Then she stepped back from the ring. She walked past the frozen medics, past the starring cadets, past the scaled instructors. She walked with perfect posture, leaving a trail of blood drops behind her until she reached her fellow humans. Was crying silently, tears running down her pale cheeks. Ho's hands were shaking, not with fear, but with the effort of staying still when every part of him had wanted to help. His face showed nothing, but her eyes were bright with something that might have been pride. "Stay calm," Hannah said quietly to her group. "Stay together, say nothing." Then she turned to face the rest of the hall, the blood still flowing down her face, and waited for whatever would happen next. For a long moment, nothing happened. The silence stretched on and on. Then the Pelian medic finally broke free from her shock and rushed to his fallen body. Other medics followed. Someone called for a medical transport. Someone else started clearing the cadets from the hall. The humans stayed where they were, standing in their tight group, watching everything with careful eyes. The galaxy had just learned something new about humanity. It was a lesson written in blood, both red and purple, on a white training mat. It was a lesson about what happened when you mistook silence for weakness and patience for fear. They had shown their teeth, and the galaxy would never look at them the same way again. The medical bay on Station 7 was the largest room on the entire station. It had to be. When you trained warriors from 40 different species, you needed space for 40 different types of injuries. There were tanks filled with healing liquid for aquatic species. There were pressure chambers for those who came from high-gravity worlds. There were quiet rooms with special lighting for species that healed through meditation. Today, the medical bay had two very unusual patients. Hannah sat on a metal table designed for species much larger than her. A Pelian doctor worked on her face with tools so small and precise they were almost invisible. The nose was the easy part. Human cartilage could be reset and would heal on its own. The bone fractures were more complicated, but the advanced technology of the station made them manageable. "You will need to wear a protective covering for 14 days, the doctor said. Her voice was soft, almost musical, the way all Pelian voices were. "After that, you will heal completely. There may be slight changes to the shape of your nose." Hannah nodded. She had not spoken since arriving at the medical bay. She had not needed to. Her silence said everything. In another section of the bay, separated by thick walls that could contain almost any biological threat, Instructor lay in a regeneration pod. His arm was the worst of it, a compound fracture that had nearly broken through the skin. The doctors had to remove bone fragments and rebuild the joint from scratch. He would need 6 weeks of regeneration therapy before he could use the arm again. But the arm was not what worried the doctors most. His throat had suffered severe trauma. The tubes that carried air to his lungs were bruised and swollen. He could breathe, but only with difficulty, and speaking was impossible for now. The nerve cluster in his chest had been so badly damaged that his entire body had temporarily shut down. The doctors had never seen anything like it. "How did she know?" one of the doctors asked another. "How did a human know about the nerve cluster? That information is not in any public database." The other doctor had no answer. No one had answers. The small human female with the broken nose had defeated one of the most decorated combat instructors in the galaxy in 30 seconds, and no one could explain how. The inquiry began on the second day. Admiral, the station's commanding officer, personally reviewed the training footage. He was Tellurian, an insect-like species with a hard shell body, compound eyes, and mandibles that clicked when he was thinking. He had served for 40 years. He had seen countless battles and trained thousands of warriors, but he had never seen anything quite like what Hannah had done. He watched the footage 17 times. Each time he noticed something new. The way Hana's body had shifted before even finished speaking. She had known the attack was coming before it happened. The angle of her palm strike, perfectly calculated to find the weakness in armor. The sweep of her leg, exactly positioned to unbalance a creature 3 times her size. The elbow to the throat, the knee to the nerve cluster. Every movement was precise. Every strike was planned. There was no anger in her technique, no wild emotion. It was clean and efficient and absolutely devastating. On the 3rd day, Admiral summoned Hana to his office. The office was large and sparse, decorated only with weapons from various conquered enemies. Hana entered and stood at attention, her bandaged face revealing nothing. The Admiral studied her with his compound eyes for a long moment before speaking. "Sit," he said. His translator gave the word a flat, mechanical quality. Hana sat. "I have watched the recording of your fight with Instructor," the Admiral began. "I have watched it many times. I have questions." Hana waited. "You could have killed him. It was not a question." "Yes, Admiral." "You chose not to." "Correct." "Why?" The question hung in the air. Hana considered it carefully before answering. On Earth, in her grandfather's training hall, she had been taught that words were weapons too. The right words at the right time could end a fight before it started. The wrong words could make enemies when you needed friends. "On Earth," she said finally, "we have a concept called proportional response. Instructor intended to humiliate me, not to kill me. I responded in kind." The Admiral's mandibles clicked rapidly, the Tellurian equivalent of surprise. "You consider a shattered arm proportional to a broken nose." "I consider it proportional to what would have happened if I had not acted," Hana replied. Her voice remained calm and steady. "Instructor was not going to stop with me. He was going to continue his methods with the other humans. Jun, they have not trained as long as I have. They might not have been able to control themselves the way I did. They might have killed him." Silence filled the office. The Admiral processed her words. "You are saying that by breaking his arm, you saved his life." "I am saying that I protected everyone in that room, Admiral, including him." The Admiral leaned back in his chair. His compound eyes shifted, seeing Hana from multiple angles at once. When he spoke again, his voice was different, thoughtful. "The footage has been classified," he said, "but it has already spread. Half the station saw it happen. The other half has heard about it. By now, the story is probably traveling across the galaxy." Hana nodded. She had expected this. "You and your fellow humans have become very interesting to the galaxy," the Admiral continued. "Some will fear you. Some will want to study you. Some will want to test you to see if you are really as dangerous as that footage suggests." "We are not dangerous, Admiral," Hana said quietly. "We are simply survivors. Earth taught us to survive. It also taught us when to fight and when to stop fighting. Instructor is alive because we know the difference." The Admiral was silent for a long time. When he finally spoke, his mandibles formed something that might have been a smile. "The inquiry is concluded. No charges will be filed. Instructor initiated unauthorized combat against a cadet. You defended yourself within acceptable parameters." He paused. "Though I suspect your definition of acceptable and the galaxy's definition may be somewhat different." Hana stood. She saluted in the human fashion, which the Admiral returned with a gesture of his own. "One more thing," the Admiral said as she turned to leave. "The footage shows that you smiled. After he broke your nose before you attacked, you smiled at him. Why?" Hana paused at the door. When she looked back, there was something ancient and knowing in her eyes. "It is a human thing, Admiral. We call it a warning. Most species recognize it. Instructor did not." She left the office. Behind her, Admiral sat in silence, thinking about warnings and teeth, and the strange soft creatures that had crawled up from their death world to take their place among the stars. 8 weeks after the incident, Instructor returned to duty. His arm had been rebuilt with synthetic materials that made it stronger than before. The doctors had done excellent work. There was no visible scar, no sign of the break that had shattered bone and torn muscle. But something else had changed in him, something that could not be fixed with medicine or technology. The cadets noticed it immediately. The brutal discipline sessions stopped. The random attacks designed to humiliate and dominate stopped. Still trained his cadets hard, still pushed them to their limits, but now he asked questions first. He studied each species, learned their weaknesses and their strengths, and tailored his training to help them improve rather than simply to cause pain. No one talked about why he had changed. They did not need to. Everyone knew. The footage of the fight had spread across the galaxy exactly as Admiral had predicted. Within days, it was the most viewed combat recording in galactic network history. Analysts from dozens of species studied it frame by frame. Military academies used it as training material. Scientists wrote papers about human physiology and psychology, trying to understand how a creature so small and soft could be so devastatingly effective. The humans became famous. More than famous, they became a symbol. Species that had been conquered and oppressed for generations watched the footage and felt something stir in their hearts. If the soft humans could stand up to an instructor, maybe there was hope. Maybe strength was not just about size and armor and natural weapons. Maybe it was about something else, something inside, something that could not be measured or. Hannah graduated from the academy at the top of her class. It was not a surprise to anyone. She had proven herself in the most public way possible, but what impressed her instructors, even who never spoke to her directly again, was not her combat skills. It was her leadership. In the months following the incident, Hannah had taken charge of the human cadets. She trained them, guided them, helped them navigate the complex politics of a multi-species military academy. When Jun struggled with zero-gravity combat, she worked with him every night until he mastered it. When was targeted by a group of cadets looking for revenge, Hannah handled the situation so quietly that no one even realized there had been a problem. Ho, Jun, and all the others graduated alongside her. Every single human who had arrived at the academy finished their training. It was the first time in the station's history that a species had achieved a 100% graduation rate. The first human special operations unit was commissioned on the day of graduation. Hannah was named its commanding officer, the youngest commander in the history of the unified species military. Her unit was called a name that had once been an insult but was now spoken with respect. Years passed. The humans proved themselves again and again on battlefields across the galaxy. They fought pirates in the outer systems. They defended colonies against invaders. They stood beside species that had once looked down on them and showed that strength came in many forms. And through it all, Hannah never forgot the lesson she had learned in that training hall. 15 years after the incident, a journalist from the Galactic News Network requested an interview. By then, Hannah had become legendary, the woman who had broken in 30 seconds, the commander who had never lost a soldier under her command, the human who had changed the galaxy's understanding of her species. The interview took place in her office on Earth, in the city where she had grown up. Through the window behind her, the journalist could see mountains in the distance, still wild and dangerous after all these of human civilization. "Commander," the journalist began, "the footage of your fight with Instructor has been studied by every military academy in the galaxy. It is used to train warriors. It is used to teach strategy. But there is one thing that no analyst has been able to explain. After he broke your nose, you smiled. Can you tell me why?" Hannah was older now, but her eyes were still the same, calm and deep, revealing nothing and everything at the same time. Her nose had healed perfectly, though if you looked closely, you could see it was slightly different from before. "On Earth," she said, "we have predators, many kinds of predators. Some of them are bigger than us, stronger than us, faster than us. Our ancestors had to survive against these creatures with nothing but their bodies and their minds. She paused, looking out the window at the mountains. But we learned something important. We learned that showing your teeth can mean two things. It can mean you are happy, or it can mean you are about to fight. Most animals understand this. When a human smiles a certain way, when we show our teeth just so, every predator on our planet knows what it means. And what does it mean? The journalist asked. It means I am not afraid of you. It means I have decided to fight. It means whatever happens next, you should be worried, not me. The journalist was quiet for a moment. Then she asked the question that everyone wanted answered. What do you want the galaxy to understand about humanity? Hannah's smile now was different, softer, warmer, genuinely human. We are not monsters, she said. We did not come to the stars to conquer or destroy. We came because we are curious. We came because we want to learn and grow and make friends with species we have never met. Earth made us survivors, but it also made us dreamers. She leaned forward slightly. But we want the galaxy to understand something else too. We know what it means to fight for survival. We have been doing it for millions of years. We would rather make friends than enemies. We would rather build than destroy. We would rather help than hurt. But if someone insists on being our enemy... Hannah's smile shifted, just slightly, and for a moment the journalist saw something ancient in her eyes. If someone insists on being our enemy, they should know that we have had a very, very long time to practice being good at that too. The interview ended. The journalist left. Hannah sat alone in her office, looking out at the mountains where her ancestors had once hunted and been hunted, where they had learned the lessons that had carried them to the stars. Outside, the sun was setting over Earth, painting the sky in shades of red and gold. It was beautiful and dangerous, just like everything else on this death world that had created a species strange enough to be both gentle and terrible, both loving and lethal. The galaxy had learned its lesson about humanity. But Hannah knew that the learning was just beginning.